Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine standing in front of a room full of people. Their eyes are on you, their hearts are open, and their spirits are hungry. And with just a few words, a story, a message, you ignite a fire inside them that changes the way they see themselves forever. That, my friends, is the power of storytelling. Not just telling a story, but becoming the story. You see, stories are not just words, they are bridges. Bridges that connect hearts. Bridges that turn strangers into family. Bridges that transform fear into courage, pain into purpose, and dreams into reality. But here's the truth. Not everyone who tells a story is a storyteller. A storyteller doesn't just speak, they breathe life into words. They don't just communicate, they connect. And the lesson I want to leave with you today is simple. Your voice has power, your story has value, and your communication can transform not only your life, but the lives of everyone who hears you. Now, some of you might be thinking, but I don't have a story worth sharing. Let me tell you something. The very thing you've gone through, the challenge you survived, the pain you endured, that's your story. And somebody somewhere is waiting for it, because your survival can be someone else's survival guide. Effective communication is not about fancy words. It's about authenticity. It's about being real. When you speak from the heart, people feel it in their soul. When you own your truth, you give others permission to own theirs. So I challenge you today, step into your story. Speak with passion. Speak with courage. Speak with love, and watch how your words create ripples that transform lives far beyond what you can imagine. Because at the end of the day, people may forget your words, but they will never forget how your story made them feel. Thank you. Storytelling is not just about words strung together. It is about creating a bridge between human experiences. Think about it. Every time someone shares a story, they are extending a hand to another person, saying, "Come, walk with me for a moment. See the world through my eyes." That act of invitation is powerful because it doesn't demand agreement. It simply offers connection. Stories are bridges that close the gap between cultures, backgrounds, and perspectives. They remind us that no matter how different we may seem on the surface, deep down we all share the same fears, the same dreams, the same longing for love, purpose, and belonging. When a storyteller steps up and shares from the heart, something magical happens. Walls come down. The walls of judgment, prejudice, and assumption crumble, because it's hard to hate someone when you understand their story. A story gives context to a person's life. It reveals the why behind their choices, the how behind their struggles, and the what that keeps them going. Suddenly, instead of strangers, we see reflections of ourselves in one another. That's the real power of storytelling. It dismantles barriers and reminds us of our shared humanity. Now consider this: facts tell, but stories sell. Facts might reach the mind, but stories reach the heart. And once the heart is touched, the mind follows. That's why leaders, teachers, visionaries, and change makers throughout history have leaned on storytelling as their greatest tool. A story has the ability to inspire action, to spark belief, and to transform apathy into passion. When words cross that invisible bridge from one heart to another, they don't just inform, they ignite, they create energy, movement, and momentum. Think of the greatest speeches or lessons you've ever heard. Chances are, what you remember most is not a statistic or a piece of data. It's the story that was wrapped around it. You remember how it made you feel. You remember the courage of the speaker, the struggle of the hero, the triumph of the underdog. Why? Because stories don't just speak to our intellect, they speak to our emotions, and emotions are the language of transformation. Without emotion, words fall flat. But with emotion, they build bridges that no obstacle can destroy. And here's the beauty of it. You don't have to be a professional speaker to build these bridges. Every person has the ability to tell stories. Every conversation, every shared experience, every moment of honesty is an opportunity to build a bridge. Parents build bridges with their children through bedtime stories. Friends build bridges with each other through laughter and shared memories. Even in the workplace, leaders build bridges with their teams by sharing stories of vision, challenge, and growth. The bridge of storytelling is not reserved for the stage. It belongs to all of us in every corner of our lives. When you see storytelling as a bridge, you stop underestimating its power. You stop dismissing your own voice. Because your story, no matter how small it seems, might be the very bridge someone else needs to cross from despair to hope, from fear to courage, from doubt to belief. That's the kind of connection stories create. Connections that don't just inform, but transform. Words are not just sounds that fill the air. They are forces that shape destinies. Think about it. Entire nations have been moved by speeches. Entire generations have been inspired by messages. And entire lives have been changed by a single sentence spoken at the right time. Words are seeds. When planted in the soil of the human heart, they can grow into courage, faith, vision, or determination. And just like seeds, the right words at the right moment can produce a harvest far beyond what anyone could imagine. Many of us can remember a time when someone's words shifted our perspective. Maybe it was a teacher who said, "You are capable of more than you think." Maybe it was a friend who told you, "Don't give up, you've got this." Or maybe it was a mentor who challenged you, "Stop hiding your gift, the world needs it." Those words might have been spoken casually, but they landed like lightning inside of you. And in that moment, something changed. You began to see yourself differently. That's the life-changing power of words. They can unlock doors inside the human spirit that nothing else can touch. It's important to realize that words don't just describe reality, they create it. When someone says, "I believe in you," they are not simply stating a fact, they are helping to create a new possibility. When a coach says to their team, "We will win," those words begin to shape the mindset, the energy, and the behavior of the players. And when a parent whispers to a child at bedtime, "You are loved," those words become a foundation on which that child builds their sense of worth. Words are construction tools for the soul. They build confidence, identity, and vision, or if used carelessly, they can destroy them. That is why effective communicators understand the responsibility of their words. They don't just talk, they craft. They recognize that what they say carries weight. A careless insult can linger in someone's heart for decades, but a single word of encouragement can spark greatness that lives for generations. That's why it matters to speak with intention. Every time we open our mouths, we have the choice to either drain someone's spirit or fill it, to either dim the light or ignite the fire. The choice is ours. History is full of examples of words sparking transformation. Leaders have stood before weary crowds and said words that stirred hope, and suddenly the impossible became possible. Activists have spoken words that challenged systems of injustice, and suddenly the powerless found strength. Innovators have painted pictures of the future with their words, and suddenly people who never believed in change began to dream again. In every movement, in every breakthrough, in every moment of transformation, words were the spark that lit the fire. So when we say words have life-changing power, we are not exaggerating. One sentence can shift the direction of a person's life. One conversation can unlock potential that has been buried for years. One message can awaken dreams that have been sleeping. And when those words are spoken with conviction, authenticity, and love, they don't just touch the ears. They touch the soul. That is the true power of words, to ignite transformation that begins within and ripples outward into the world. Too many people walk through life believing they don't have a story worth telling. They compare themselves to others who have faced dramatic struggles, climbed massive mountains, or achieved extraordinary success, and they whisper to themselves, "My life is too ordinary. Who would want to hear my story?" But here's the truth. Every life holds value. Every journey, no matter how simple or quiet, contains lessons that can inspire, teach, and guide others. Your story is not about being the loudest or the biggest. It's about being real. And real always resonates. Think about the stories that have moved you. They weren't always filled with fame, fortune, or fireworks. Sometimes it's the story of an everyday person who refused to give up, who got back up after falling, who kept moving forward despite setbacks. Ordinary people with ordinary struggles who chose to keep going. Those are the stories that strike chords deep inside us. Why? Because they remind us that greatness is not found in perfection. It's found in perseverance. And perseverance is something everyone can relate to. The belief that your story isn't valuable often comes from underestimating the power of your own experiences. What you see as just my life could be the very message someone else has been waiting to hear. Your moments of heartbreak may offer comfort to someone who feels alone. Your victories, no matter how small, may offer hope to someone who is on the edge of giving up. Your lessons learned the hard way may become shortcuts that save someone else years of struggle. The story you live through today may be the survival guide for someone tomorrow. One of the greatest mistakes is to keep your story locked inside you. Stories gain power only when they are shared. Imagine someone drowning in discouragement, reaching for a lifeline, and the rope they need is the story you are keeping silent. When you open your mouth and share your journey, you might just throw that rope at the exact moment it's needed most. Your vulnerability becomes someone else's strength. Your testimony becomes someone else's turning point. That's why your story, no matter how ordinary you think it is, carries extraordinary power. And here's something else to remember. Your story is always evolving. It doesn't have to be finished or polished to hold value. Some people think, I'll share my story once I've made it, once I've figured everything out. But the truth is, people don't connect with finished products. They connect with works in progress. They don't need to hear from someone who has it all together. They need to hear from someone who is walking the path just like them. Sharing your story while you're still on the journey makes you relatable, approachable, and real. The bottom line is this: your story matters simply because it is yours. It carries your fingerprints, your voice, your perspective, things no one else on this planet can replicate. That uniqueness is what makes it valuable. The world doesn't need another copy of someone else's story. It needs yours. And when you finally embrace that truth and share it, you'll be amazed at the lives you can touch, the hearts you can heal, and the futures you can inspire just by being willing to tell your story. Pain is not something we choose. It comes uninvited, unexpected, and often unwanted. It shows up in the form of heartbreak, failure, loss, or disappointment. For many people, pain feels like a dead end. It feels like the moment where life has taken too much and left too little. But here's the lesson hidden inside every painful experience. Pain is not a dead end, it is a doorway. And on the other side of that doorway lies purpose. The very thing that once tried to break you can become the thing that builds you into who you were meant to be. When you look at the lives of those who inspire others, you'll notice something: their power often comes from their pain. The person who comforts others in grief usually knows what it's like to lose. The leader who motivates people to rise higher usually knows what it feels like to fall. The coach who pushes others to greatness usually knows the sting of failure. Their strength is not born out of perfection. It's born out of scars. And it's the scar, not the trophy, that often speaks the loudest. Your struggles are not wasted. Every hardship you've survived has prepared you to help someone else who feels they can't survive theirs. When you tell the story of how you endured, how you kept moving even when the road was dark, you shine a light for others who are walking through their own darkness. Your pain becomes a map. Your scars become a testimony. And your testimony becomes a lifeline for someone who thinks they're drowning. That is how pain transforms into purpose. It takes what hurt you and turns it into what helps others. We live in a world where people are desperate for realness. They don't need more perfect examples. They need proof that broken people can still rise. They need reminders that failure is not final, that heartbreak is not the end, and that disappointment doesn't define destiny. And who can provide that reminder better than someone who has lived it? When you stand up and say, I've been where you are, and I made it through, you're not just speaking, you're transferring hope. You're showing others that survival is possible and that thriving is within reach. It's easy to look back on painful moments and wish they had never happened. But if you lean into them, you'll see they were shaping you, molding you, preparing you. That difficult chapter taught you strength you didn't know you had. That loss taught you the value of life in a way nothing else could. That failure gave you resilience, sharpened your focus, and made you hungrier to succeed. In other words, your pain was not random. It was part of your training. And now, what you learned in your training can become the very thing that empowers others. The most powerful voices in the world are not those who have avoided pain, but those who have faced it and transformed it. That is why your pain carries purpose. It gives you credibility, it gives you compassion, and it gives you a message that no textbook could ever teach. People may admire your success, but they are moved by your struggle. They may clap for your victories, but they are changed by your scars. And when you stand in your purpose, rooted in the pain you have overcome, your life becomes a message that says to the world, if I made it through, you can too. When most people think about communication, they imagine polished speeches, flawless delivery, and perfect grammar. They believe they have to sound like a professional announcer or speak with academic precision to hold an audience's attention. But here's the truth: people don't connect with perfection. They connect with authenticity. Authentic communication is not about sounding flawless. It's about sounding real. When you speak from the heart, people don't care if you stumble over a word or pause too long. What they care about is whether they can feel you, whether they can trust you, whether they can see themselves in your story. Perfection puts up walls, but authenticity builds bridges. When you try to present yourself as perfect, people often tune out because they can't relate. They look at you and think, that person's life is too polished, too far from mine. They wouldn't understand me. But when you are vulnerable, when you admit your mistakes, when you laugh at your flaws, you become human in the eyes of your audience. And once you are human, you are relatable. Relatability is the foundation of true communication. Think about the last time you were deeply moved by someone's words. Chances are it wasn't because they were perfect. It was because they were honest. Maybe they shared a story of struggle that sounded like your own. Maybe they admitted to fear, doubt, or failure in a way that gave you permission to acknowledge your own. That kind of honesty breaks down barriers. It says, I'm not above you. I'm walking alongside you. And in that moment, communication becomes connection. Authenticity also carries power because it shows courage. It takes courage to stand in front of people and be real. It takes courage to share your flaws, your scars, your lessons. But courage is contagious. When your audience sees you daring to be authentic, they feel inspired to drop their own masks. They feel safe enough to be honest with themselves. This is why authentic communication doesn't just pass information, it creates transformation. It opens a space where real growth and healing can happen. Another reason authenticity works is because it is memorable. Perfect speeches may impress, but they are easily forgotten. Authentic stories, however, linger. When you speak from your truth, people carry your words with them because they struck a deeper chord. They don't just remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. And feelings, not flawless delivery, are what create lasting impact. So, effective communication is not about how polished you sound. It's about how genuine you are. It's not about the image you project. It's about the truth you reveal. People aren't looking for a flawless speaker. They are looking for a human being who is brave enough to be real. And when you choose authenticity over perfection, you give others the gift of connection, the gift of trust, and the gift of seeing themselves in your story. Storytelling is never a one-way street. Many people think it's only about the audience, about inspiring or teaching others. But the truth is, storytelling transforms the storyteller just as much as the listener. Every time you tell your story, you relive the lessons, you reaffirm the strength you found, and you see how far you've come. Speaking your story out loud is like holding up a mirror. You not only remind others of their potential, you remind yourself of your own. It is a process of growth, healing, and empowerment for both sides. For the listeners, stories are windows. They open perspectives that might never have been considered. A powerful story can introduce new beliefs, fresh hope, or a different way of seeing challenges. But for the storyteller, stories are also doors. They unlock hidden wisdom within. They open pathways to greater confidence, and they release the burden of holding pain in silence. In this way, storytelling is not just communication, it is mutual transformation. Both hearts are moved, both minds are shifted, both lives are touched. When you share your story, you step into courage. Maybe you were once ashamed of what you went through, or maybe you kept your struggles hidden out of fear of judgment. But each time you tell your truth, you weaken the grip of fear and strengthen the power of freedom. That growth doesn't happen just once. It happens every time you speak. And as you grow bolder, your listeners grow braver. They see you taking ownership of your story, and they begin to imagine that they, too, can own theirs. Listeners grow because your story plants seeds inside them. Maybe your resilience sparks their determination. Maybe your healing inspires their own. Maybe your victories light a fire of belief in their hearts. But at the same time, you, the storyteller, grow because every nod, every tear, every smile from your audience shows you that your story matters. You begin to see your scars not as weaknesses, but as sources of strength. You begin to understand that your journey wasn't just about you. It was preparing you to be a voice of hope for others. This exchange creates a powerful cycle. The more you share, the more you grow. The more you grow, the more people are inspired by you. And the more people are inspired, the more courage they gain to share their own stories. Storytelling multiplies impact. It doesn't stop with one speaker and one audience. It spreads, it ripples, it expands beyond the room, beyond the moment, touching lives you may never even meet. That's the quiet, unstoppable power of stories. They create waves of transformation that keep moving long after the words have been spoken. And so, storytelling is not just a gift you give to others, it is also a gift you give to yourself. By telling your story, you keep evolving. You keep discovering new meaning in old experiences. You keep uncovering fresh strength in places you once felt broken. And as you share that growth with others, they too are lifted. This is why storytelling is sacred. It doesn't just inform, it transforms. It transforms the listener, and it transforms the speaker, creating a shared journey of growth that connects hearts in ways nothing else can.